All right, folks, right here on set, switching gears slightly. Joining us, Steve Miran, I beg your pardon, Federal Reserve Governor and friend. Welcome, Steve. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Today's jobs numbers, they were very good numbers. I guess my question is, to the extent you can talk to it, does that mean you can't lower interest rates because the economy showed good, because it's 4.3% unemployment or the jobs numbers are good? Does that mean you cannot lower rates?
It doesn't mean that to me. Look, there's a lot of things that go into monetary policy. Economic growth is one of them, right? What's the output gap? Where's economic activity relative to where the economy could accommodate? Inflation, and then what we call neutral rates. And what today's jobs data showed you is that underlying economic growth is fine, but when I look forward, I see inflation coming down quite dramatically this year for a variety of reasons. One of them is quirks of how shelter is measured. There's reasons to think that shelter inflation is going to come down quite dramatically this year. Another one of them is a result of various, and I think you'll love this, various policies that have pushed out the supply side of the economy are quite disinflationary. I gave a speech in January about the effects of regulations on the economy. And the truth is that when you slash regulations, you allow the economy to produce more with the same amount of inputs. That pushes out supply. It opens up what we would call an output gap. It means that the economy is below potential because you've increased potential GDP much more than you've increased actual GDP. Normally, monetary policy would accommodate that with looser rates, and it brings down prices. When you look at the ways in which economists quantify regulations, modern ways of quantifying these things, they've been coming down at a really fast rate. And I did some calculations in that speech in January, which showed that the deregulation effort is going to be dragging on inflation by about 0.5 point a year in coming years. So I view there's being a variety of reasons still why I would want to see lower interest rates. And while today's jobs data made me feel really good about the economy, I think the truth is that pushing out the supply side of the economy still allows for monetary policies to accommodate that.
You know, I talked to the president yesterday. I mean, the president loves factories. He loves building factories. And sure enough, in today's numbers in January, which is a cold weather month nonetheless, construction up 33,000 is one of the biggest gainers in the report. All right, that's a factory building measure. It's probably going to be impacting higher jobs coming up. So if you're building more factories and producing more goods, more widgets, more apples, the prices of those things have to come down. You're putting more on the market, the prices will come down, the inflation rate can come down. But here's the thing, you've been on the Fed. How long have you been on the Fed? 6 months?
Since September.
Since September,
anyway. About 5 months.
They don't really believe that. The board staff, they think growth causes inflation. What is wrong with them?
Yeah, there's not really a channel in the way that the Fed staff model these things that allows for increases in what we'd call total factor productivity or the absolute production capacity of the economy. There's not really a channel in these things for that to decrease inflation itself unless it opens what we call an output gap, which is where potential increases by more than actual, as we were talking a moment ago, but they assume that doesn't happen. And so there's not really a path by which you can push out the supply side of the economy in that modeling framework and get lower prices. And obviously, you know, that's not my view. I outlined this in that January speech. I do think if you push out the supply side of the economy, you get lower prices. If you produce more goods and services, you're going to push down the prices of that. And I think that a lot of people, including a lot of people at the Fed, blame supply chain problems for inflation after the pandemic. And I think that monetary policy and fiscal policy and regulatory policy played a strong role in that too. But a lot of people blame supply chain failures for the inflation that we experienced in 2021, 2022. And so it only stands to reason to me that if you think that supply shocks can drive inflation higher on the upside, you also have to think that pushing supply out can drive inflation lower in either direction.
But they don't think that way.
But that's my perspective is that's
what you brought to the board.
I think that's what's happening. I think we're seeing that play out in real time, and we're going to see it play out.
And Kevin Warsh he will endorse that model. He will. He very much supply driven, not demand driven. Anyway, he's going to be a great appointee. So the Fed right after the election, this goes back before your time, but the December 2024, the Fed was predicting 1.7% growth in 2025. Okay, we're going to come in over 3% when it's all said and done. I mean, the fourth quarter may be, I don't know, with today's jobs numbers, maybe 4%. Anyway, the run rate is over 3%. The Fed missed it, okay? They always miss it. Why is that? Why can't they get that right? And it, added to that is the issue of interest rates. It just seems like unless the unemployment rate rises a lot, they don't want to lower interest rates. It's all driven by the growth of the economy, except it never seems to want lower rates.
So I don't want to pick on anyone specifically, but I think there's been a variety of things over the last year that a lot of folks have got wrong, and I think in general people have been moving in my direction on these issues. One of them was that a lot of people thought that tariffs were going to drive a big downward cycle in the economy and a big inflation shock, and as you know, we didn't get either of those. I think that people have been underappreciating the importance of regulations. It's difficult to study economically, and therefore people like to ignore it, but it's one of the most powerful things for determining the supply side of the economy. If you've got these regulations determining the industrial mix because you overregulate and you push the industry to China, that's going to change the entire productivity profile, industrial mix of the entire economy. That is the supply side right there. I mean, there you go. And then there's the investments from, that have been stimulated from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So I think that there's a variety of things that push at the supply side. That's all, in my view, quite disinflationary. It also, in my view, opens an output gap because it pushes out potential GDP more than it pushes out actual GDP.
Well, you've been right. I mean, I think your point of view has been right. I think your dissents have been excellent. And you've been right. I think the board staff's been wrong. But I'm worried about you because Kevin Warsh could wind up taking the seat you have now. Yeah, and well, we don't know if Jay Powell, we assume Jay Powell will be a gentleman and will leave. His chairmanship ends in May. We assume he'll leave the board. He doesn't want to hang around. He'll go and play golf and retire and so forth. But what happens to Steve Miran when the music stops? Where's your chair? Because you've done a good job. I want to see you stay there.
I wish I knew. Look, I'd be very happy to say at the end of the day, it's not up to me. At present, as you point out, my seat is the only one available to have an appointment in it at this moment. What happens later this year will depend on a variety of things. It depends if there's an open seat. It depends on a choice that the president makes. It depends on choices that the Senate makes.
But if he said, if the president asks, if he finds a spot for you, you could be out, but you'd be back in. He said, Steve, you've done a good job. I want you to come on the board for the long term. Would you say yes?
Oh, yeah, that absolutely could happen. But I absolutely would. But that's not up to me. There's got to be a seat available. That, of course, the president would have to decide that, and the Senate would have to decide that too. So.
I mean, the unemployment rate fell to 4.3%, which is a good. I don't want you to make it 4.4%. Myron unemployment. I'm worried about you.
Thanks. Look, all these things are beyond my control. I control my outlook for monetary policy, and I communicate that outlook. Anything else, not up to me.
Well, you've done a good job. I think a lot of people would say, like to see you stay on the Federal Reserve Board. Anyway, Steve Miran, thanks for visiting. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
All right.